Hello guys, today I will be talking to you about a case called Lochner versus New York of 1905. To many historians, this was what set up the Lochner era, which was a 30-year period in which the U.S. Supreme Court decided to strike down regulations and acts, laws on the free market. Let's go ahead and start. Um, this took place in New York. At the time, there was a labor law, and the law basically made bakers only allowed bakers work a maximum of 60 hours a week, and to many this angered them because they wanted to provide for their family. Uh, but the reason why they only allowed them to work 60 hours was because of the critical conditions of working in a bakery. It was very hazardous, especially because it was hot and humid, and it was dirty, and they were soggy type bakeries. We have to keep in mind that this was the 20th century, and bakeries then were not as good as they are today. And this one man in particular, called Joseph Lochner, he owned a bakery named Joseph Lochner's Bakery. And in his bakery, he had bakers working more than 60 hours. They were working about 100 hours a week. And when New York found out, they decided to indict him, and they charged him $50. And today that might not be a lot of money, but again, let's keep in mind this was the 20th century, and back then it was a good amount of money. And he had to pay $50 or he could stay in jail. And the amount of days he had to serve in jail was 50 days. And this angered Joseph Lochner, so he appealed, and he took the case to the New York Court of Appeals, which is the highest court of New York, or was at the time. I'm not sure if it is or if it's not anymore. So once he took it to the New York Court of Appeals, Joseph Lochner won his case, and then he took it to the Supreme Court. The question raised now in the Supreme Court was, does the New York law violate the liberty protected by the due process, other known as the 14th Amendment? And first of all, let's identify what due process means. The Due Process Clause prohibits states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And in a 5-4 decision, they determined that the act was unconstitutional. This was mainly because the court held that the act was unreasonable, unnecessary, and arbitrary interference with the right of the individual to his personal liberty. It basically stated that a person has the right to work as much hours as he or she wants in a given week, depending, of course, on how much the person in charge wants to give them. To the court, the right to buy and sell liberty through contract was the liberty of the individual, which is protected under the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court argued that a person under the 14th Amendment had the right to work as much as he or she wanted. The court held that the Constitution prohibited states from interfering with most employment contracts because the right to buy and sell labor is a fundamental freedom by the 14th Amendment. So this now allowed Joseph Lochner to give as much hours he wanted to his bakers. And this not only was due to due process, but substantive due process, which goes farther more into detail. It's basically the belief that us as people have certain rights that are protected by the 14th Amendment, which, for example, the right to contract and the liberty of contract, uh, which means we have the right, we have certain rights as people, basic certain rights. And substantive due process was ultimately what struck down the law and regulation, or the labor law, and it was now won by Lochner, and it allowed many bakers to work as much as they wanted.